Thank you, Janet, and everyone at HCCNY. You guys are doing great work, and it's really been fun to partner with you and work with you. So I'm anxious about this slide. I gotta get my mark out here. So anyway, this was 3 years ago when I was much younger, and I'm sitting on a truck with a lot of plants, getting ready to take them to a property where they will reseed and rewild, which is exactly what they've done. It's been really fantastic. So I'm here today to tell you about seed. You know, it's something that we don't really think about, but it's something that we obviously need. And all of you guys have heard all of this background material. You know, why are we doing this? Why do we need native plants? You know, well, a report just came out that 22% of our pollinator populations are threatened with extinction. It's really a harsh thing to say, and it's true. So we really need native plants more than anything. And if you look around, you don't see many. That's the issue. If you don't see plants, you don't have seed, right? And I can tell you, I started this business 5 years ago. We traipsed through ditches and we got on private lands, and you know, you can only get what's out there. And you know, you're harvesting from the same populations, which is genetically not a good idea. So we started thinking, what are we going to do about this? So we started planting for seed, but we're still looking for more seed. So anyway, these are some of the reasons why we do this. And I think this is on your website, Janet, but watch what's the rush that Doug Tallamy YouTube presentation.
It's on the Homegrown National Park website.
Oh, okay. It's just great. And if you have any questions about why we should be doing this, Doug will answer it for you. This is one of the reasons why we do this. As Janet mentioned, we're working on Skaneateles Lake. We're trying to create sponges around the lake so that the water doesn't just rush right down to the lake and carry all the garbage and crap with it. It actually slows down, right? See that? That's turf grass. And all the rest of the native plants, you know, with their deep roots, right? So the water will not rush down, right? This is not true, but this is also why we need seed. If you look at the meadow, the water will get slowed down by all that vegetation and then gradually seep down through the roots, where it will purify before it hits a recharge zone and goes back into the lake. So we need it. And you know, one property, okay, but when you have one property, another property, there's death by 1,000 cuts, right? So you've got to do something. A report came out in 2023 from the National Academy of Sciences and said, oopsie, you know, if we you know, have fires or floods or drought or, you know, any of these natural disasters, we don't have the seed to recover from that, right? So out in the West Coast, where there's lots of fires, they were like, you know, trying to find ag seed or any other, you know, non-native seed to put down. And then they said, oh, we need native seed. So the whole process was put into place, and I think it's in Idaho. It's a great film. I absolutely suggest you write this down and watch it and get a cup of coffee and watch it for an hour. It's great. It's called Native Seed Supply and Restoration. And it's all about a supply chain and how you build it and why you build it. And it's just fantastic. So anyway, that happened. That was paid for by the Bureau of Land Management because the fires were on rangeland and they needed to figure out how to, you know, restore these lands after the fires. We haven't had that same impetus here because we don't have fires, or we've had a few, but you know, what we're having more and more is floods. So we have the same issues and we just haven't, you know, seen it as much or felt it as much, but we definitely don't have the seed to restore. There was one case, okay, the guy I'm going to talk about later, his name is Ed Toth. He was the head of the Greenbelt Native Plant Center on Staten Island in New York City for 4 decades. And he built a supply of seeds, put it in a seed bank. And when Hurricane Sandy hit and they needed to restore, they had the material, they had the plant material. And that's what we need. So I'll tell you more about Ed in a while, but that's a good story. This is a great thing to watch. The issue is we don't have the seed, right? So how are we going to get there? So the way I understand it, and I'm learning, right? It's been a big learning curve. There are 3 ways you can get seed. Obviously, wild populations, if you can find them, right? There's cultivation, which is like growing This is the way they do it in Connecticut. The farmers in Connecticut, they'll grow rows of, penstemon or, whatever the native plant is they want to put in. And they'll grow rows, just like they grow tomatoes, right? Or wild cultivation, which is something we're going to try. So, well, let me go back for a second. This is wild collection, turtlehead, and found it in a wetland, and it's a great population. And this is cultivated collection. And I'll show you more pictures of that. So, and then there's, so wild collection, what you have to do, you have to get permission to scout and find the plants. You need people to do the search, you need to document this. You need to communicate with qualified seed collectors and get them to collect the seed when it's ready, following protocols. Then you need to clean and tag and bank the seed. For cultivation, growing for seed, we were really, really fortunate to get a grant from Onondaga County to try this. We followed the protocol, we followed the way that the Connecticut folks do it. And we found that it was way too expensive to do it this way. But you learn by doing, right? And I trained, like 10 to 15 people in how to do this. And it just took so much labor to put this all in. And we still have it. And we're going to be collecting seed off of it. But the plants are in beds. And I have to say, I had an emotional reaction to that because these plants don't grow in beds like that. They grow in, in populations, in groups, and it just didn't make sense to me, right? But it was a great experiment. We educated a lot of people. We have a lot of volunteers now who are really ready to move on to the next step, which is wild cultivation. It's kind of a hybrid of the two. So we are actually moving to a different property where we're going to have 227 acres, and we're going to have all of these habitats: meadow, dry, mesic, dry, mesic, wet meadow, wetland, dry, mesic, wet woodland edge, and dry, mesic, wet woodland. So all of those habitats we're going to have. We can take seed of 100 minimum plants, put them in a pod, plant them in a pod, and watch them grow and produce seed. So we're really excited about this. This is going to take tracking as well, because we may not just do it on our property. We may do it on other people's property. When we're out there, we're building landowner agreements so that we can go on and collect seed from their property. So anyway, this is where we're going with this. So wild cultivation the cost will be obviously plug production, which we're working on, location selection, plug transport, location preparation, plug planting, and site oversight management. I mean, as anybody knows, when you plant anything in the wild, you're going to have all different species that are going to want to grow there as well, right? So it's going to take some management of that area, but you're going to have that management anyway, right? If you have the cultivation, right? So, and these guys have to learn how to fight for it. So anyway. So, current status, I mean, I'm speaking for other growers as well. There's a lot of growers and there's more and more all the time, which is awesome. But everybody does things on their own. So we're all going out and collecting a little bit of seed, right? We're all growing a little bit of, plants. We're selling them in our own way. It's all great, but we're not scaling up to where we need to be. We're going to actually address our biodiversity crisis and our water crisis and everything, climate crisis. We need to be producing a lot more. I mean, I laugh sometimes when I think, oh my God, if I got a contract to do a ditch project, you just say, okay, I'm done for the year. You can have it all, right? We just have to scale. We just don't have enough. And so these are the things that we don't have right now. I mean, what we do is, we individually collect, we have our own cleaning and storage. It does a lot of labor to that, right? We don't have a coordination, we don't have a market coordination, there's nothing like that. There's the growers aren't really coordinating. We're starting to coordinate, which is awesome. And there's no marketplace. So if you think about it, if you go to the store and you want to get something for your property, or whatever, okay, so there's always geraniums, right? And there's begonias and there's impatiens. Those are all grown somewhere else, right? And those growers know exactly where those plants are going to go, right? And they can They sell them, they've got a market already established. There's no issue like me laying in bed and I go, oh, God, nodding onions, what am I gonna do with them? No, that's not an issue for them, right? It shouldn't be an issue for native growers either. I mean, what the heck? This is our native vegetation that we have to have, right? This is the most resilient vegetation, and we need resilient vegetation right now. Okay, that was a lot. So an organization, okay, I told you about the Greenbelt Native Plant Center in Staten Island, right? So the guy who ran that for 4 decades retired, but before he retired, he set up the Mid-Atlantic Regional Seed Bank, MARSB is what we call it. And it's an organization dedicated to building a supply chain. So luckily, this guy lives near Ithaca, and I contacted him and subsequently got on his board. But it's all really great people who know what to do. They've done this supply chain stuff. So he's been federally funded through the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service to fund a couple seed collectors and some other wildlife and wildlands habitat people. Unfortunately, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service funds got cut, right? We went down in December and lobbied for some Bill ER money, which is the bilateral infrastructure law, ecosystem restoration money that was supposed to have been left over. And we lobbied to try to get it, but everybody was like, don't know what's gonna happen, we're scared, we can't do this, blah, blah, blah. So we said, oh boy, and then it's gone. So he's operating right now on some funds he still has left from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. He's got 2 seed collectors that are awesome. And this is just a quote that he put out there, which is absolutely correct, right? You should read it yourselves. I guess I should say it for the Zoom. Our nation's seed resources are in need of the same kind of wise management and conservation warranted by other natural resources such as timber and oil. Absolutely, fundamentally, hands down, yes. So I noticed that I put all of these as priorities. But they are. So actually, this is his 6-step process, and right now, identify the need. What they're doing is, and they've done this for New York already. They put together seed lists for all the different 10 habitats that I listed, that I told you about. They're great seed lists. It's like it helps focus growers on what we need to be growing. Right, these are the ones that will get established most quickly. Doesn't mean we can't grow all the other ephemerals or whatever, whatever we would want to, maybe for gardens and that kind of thing. But it just helps us focus on the fundamentals, right? And they're doing this for the whole Mid-Atlantic region, because he's really focused on New York and everything south to Virginia. So they've got several, I think. I don't really want to run through every single one of these, but in detail, but organize and focus the marketplace, collect the seed, clean, bank, and warehouse the seed, support and develop suppliers, help growers, encourage and support the growers, and facilitate and communicate a network of all sectors of the supply chain. Now, they're not looking to do all of this themselves, but they're working in partnership to try to build this. It's absolutely fundamental. So I don't expect you to read this, but I want you to know what this is. This is a form that we will download on our phones or computer, and it is a form for people who want to scout for native plant populations. So if you're going out on a hike to somewhere cool, right, and you find a population of Rudbeckia, laciniata, oh wow, or big blue stem or whatever it is, you will record what stage it's at. You will record where it's at, any information that you can glean from the site. There's going to be a training for this at the end of May by one of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife seed collectors for anybody who's interested, right? And I think over time, this will morph into being a seed collector, but that's a much more technical skill. You wouldn't want to collect seed too early, too late. You've got to really know what you're doing, and you have to follow protocols. But if you're interested in being a scout, got a sign up sheet over there. It's a good thing to do. We really need wild population. find them, right? So this is awesome. Senator May and Assemblywoman Kelly's out of Ithaca, put forth a bill last year in 2024 to increase native seed supply. And it essentially puts out a grant program, which we're still waiting to hear about, for growers and the state government, I believe, to do anything to help grow for more seed, right? So we're really hoping that this comes out soon. But the other thing it does is it really emphasizes and prioritizes the state government on making sure that at any point in time when they're going to be putting in plants, that they prioritize native plants, right? So it passed in December of 2024, thanks to many of you who signed on. Thank you. It's just great. And now they've introduced another bill called the Pollinator Promotion Act, and I've probably seen this in the HCCNY newsletter. We're looking for more sign-ons. I've given them many already, but we're still looking for more. Any more support we can provide to Rachel May and Assemblywoman Kelly's to push this through is a good thing. Essentially this bill, and that's Lou's photo, by the way. Thank you, Lou. This bill ensures that there's pollinator habitats on all state lands. Big deal. It doesn't just have to be a little garden. It could be a meadow, right? Which would be awesome. But gosh, you need seed to do that, right? So it also ensures that there are pollinator-friendly landscaping practices. And I know it's something that you've talked about a lot. Like what does that mean, right? So I think that will require some training and all that, but that's a really good initiative. And then public education about the importance of natives. So you can imagine in a state park, there'll be a meadow or something, and there'll be a sign that explains why this is important, right? So, and all that's great, and those are sources for seed. If we use local ecotype seed to put in a meadow, we can collect from those plots, and all of you could collect, grow your own for more. So what are we doing? Well, our contribution is we're currently we're moving so that we can do this. And we're financing and building a greenhouse, 96 by 34 greenhouse, so we can grow 140,000 plugs next year. So this year it's like 20,000, and we're going to 140,000. We intend 80% of those will go out for jobs, right? Whatever those jobs will be. We're still working on that marketing piece. But 20% will go out for wild cultivation. So we could collect seed from those plants, and we could conceivably collect from places that we put the plants into, but that's a little more challenging, with landowner agreements, but we will. I'm sure we'll do that too, because why not? And any leftover will go to nonprofits who want to plant in parks, right, Kevin? So we're always going to have extras, I'm sure. So, and we're working with Mars B to build the supply chain. So that's our contribution. And this is what I think it's kind of going to look like, only there won't be mud in front of that greenhouse. I don't know. I just pulled that picture from the Remall Green site. And now I look at it, I go, that's a terrible picture. But this is where we are now. Only all these hoop houses have plastic on them, and they've got lots of little babies, thousands and thousands of little babies germinating in them. But we'll be moving all this to another site. I'll send out information. It's the site where we can do a lot of education, and it's going to be great. I will send out information and get it out in the newsletter. I'll invite everyone to come visit. So what can you do to help build supply and demand? You can become a seed scout, right? It's not the demanding thing, but it's fun. You can go out hiking and, learn native plants out in the wild, which is a great thing. You can, at our new place, you can volunteer to plant plugs. I'll get information out if you sign up, and now nobody's going to sign up. After hearing that, but yeah, so sign up for our newsletter to get more information. You can help build demand. There's there's going to be sale, Wild Ones is gonna have their sale, HGCNY is gonna have their sale in May. You can visit our online store after May 15th, when I finally get the inventory up. You can talk to your networks about adding native plants to their yards. You can be a voice to support drinking water protection, right? Because the more native plants, the more roots in the ground will help protect drinking water, and not just Skaneateles Lake. There are other lakes and creeks and that we need to protect. You can support the Pollinator Promotion Act. So there's a lot of things you can do from your home, and a lot of things you can do just by getting out and walking around. You can take note of land use and how it protects water or not. Like if you see a creek and you see a riparian zone next to it, and it's only 10 feet wide, that is not enough, especially if there's a slope, right? I mean, we expect 300 feet. That's what I'm telling people. You grow that, right? And grow it with native species. So you actually are building a nice riparian corridor, right? So in protecting water too. Take note of that. Talk to people about it. Explain to people about it. People don't understand that grass out there is actually a problem because it doesn't have a root structure that's going to send the water down. So if you have 3 days of torrential rain, which could happen, it's happened before, where's that water going to go? It's going to go right into a storm sewer that's going to go into a creek and cause a problem, right? And or it's going to back up, or it's just going to be muddy or whatever, right? Take out vegetation. There's an article in the New York Times last week about somebody down in Louisiana, and she didn't believe that the vegetation was going to do anything. And then this organization planted a whole bunch of natives in a culvert and around a ditch, berm, and blah blah blah, right at her house where she moved. The ponding was terrible when it rained, and it would flow into her house, right? And everybody in the area had that same problem because, of course, they're along the floodplain. Their houses are actually in a swamp, but whatever. So they planted like crazy, and she said, "I don't have any water problems." Evapotranspiration. Didn't we learn about this in 3rd grade? So, it really matters. It really works. So dogwoods, willows, anything, if it's really wet, right? There's a lot of plants out there. And Marsby has all these lists on their website, what's good for those habitats. Really, really, really helpful. And let's see what I say. Take note of vegetation type, land cover, clearing, and soil cover. Yeah, all soils should be covered. 100%, right? We've got to keep our soils covered. If we don't, then it rains and goes right into the creek, right into the lake, in my case, right? And our ditches are horrible. They're just mowed down to the ground, right? So there's nothing happening. There should be rain guards. There should be filters that's our last ditch protection before they hit the creek that goes right into their drinking water. I don't know. I think it's pretty stupid not to do something to try to slow that water down and have it sink in. So it, gradually purifies before it hits a recharge zone and heads into the lake. So that's what we have to offer. And if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thanks. First of all, let me say I'm not a gardener. I've got the black thumb of death, but nevertheless, when you're talking about financing and encouraging support of natural species acts and so on, do you have to promote your desired plants as being useful? Because when I hear the words conservation and resources and government anywhere near each other, that tells me that people think if I can't use it for something that makes money, then I'm not going to support it. And I'm all for supporting things just because they need to be there, not because somebody's making money off it.
Right.
But do you have to promote things in order to get what you need back from funding in the government as being useful? You're talking about the supply and demand chain, the banking, the buying and selling and so on.
Yeah, that's a good question. These plants are functional. So useful, functional, because they are protecting us from floods. because they are more drought tolerant, perhaps, depending on what plants we're talking about. I mean, every situation is unique. They are supporting our pollinators. They are supporting more than, right? So that's a kind of thing that you can't necessarily put a dollar value on sometimes, right? I mean, you can, if you lose it, you can value what it takes to put it back, but you can't always value what it is serving for the greater good, right?
I understand that.
Yeah, I know. I don't know.
Politicians are all about,
Well, I mean, I'm not getting a loan for the greenhouse. I've been working as a consultant. I borrowed from family members. So I haven't gone to a bank and tried to, articulate what I'm gonna be doing, but I have a business plan. So actually sales of these plants, is that what you mean kind of, or?
well, again, with a lot of things that are put out for people's use. Those tend to be money-making entities that support, tourism, hunting, fishing, and so on.
Right.
So, again, it's like, can you promote just the fact that it's better for the earth for things to be there, or do you have to say, we're gonna make money off of this, and this is gonna be valuable to this, that, and the other population?
I haven't taken that tack in my business. I talked purely about the ecological functions of these plants. I mean, in my business, about that, because I have to talk about my returns, right? In order to be able to borrow money, but in life with everybody else, I mean, I think these functions are so important. We can't really. I mean, if we continue on this route, if Micron comes in and they don't do anything to protect the land that they're gonna strip, they're gonna clear a whole bunch of land, great. I mean, they got a lot of, they're doing good work, I guess, I don't know, but they're gonna be clearing a lot of space. They really should think about how they're gonna cover it.
Yeah, I didn't want to name names, but that was one of the
Yeah.
concerns that I have.
Yeah, I mean, we should get a hold of their plans and see what they're trying to do. I mean, I think if anybody has any ability to do that, I think that
There's
was
actually a petition online where you can sign up to demand that plan be released. I gather their proto plan. It's only like a mile and a half from my house.
yeah.
I did sign that petition and transparency of their.
If you are able to get it, I mean, I would love to see it. I don't know how active I could be on that, but just because of my time, but we need to be thinking about that. We can't compromise our water courses.
The most recent I heard from my brother is that their wetland exchange, unfortunately, is going to take place in Oswego County, which is not going to provide the same function as wetlands and clay. That possibly adjoin the rest of the wetlands and clay.
Right.
It's interesting. I don't understand how they justify that to the DEC. If they think they're building some sort of wildlife corridor or water treatment corridor, or what the justification was. I have a feeling it was purely economic, but
It was all engineered. So do you know the person in the DEC who's in charge of that?
no, I mean, this was something my brother told me he read in the paper over the weekend.
Do you have a vision? It's important to keep genetics somewhat regional or localized, so we're not buying stock from Minnesota and this person. How do you envision with sort of the expansion of marketing and production and so on to fit the needs? How do you limit or at least educate that a given seed stock is from a certain place and therefore should be only used for the only, do you have a?
There's a lot of
idea
information out there
how to
on
do that?
ecotypes.
Right.
You've seen the maps. probably.
But how do you, when it becomes commercialized or at least expanded in scale, which is what you're promoting?
Yeah, that's a good.
How do you keep track of that, of where it came from and where therefore it should only go and so
Right.
on? You see a
I'll have to
solution
give a
or-
talk next year,
Okay.
because we're building it, right?
Okay.
So the tags will say it all, and we'll have a
Okay.
coding,
so then at
but
least
the genetics,
that would be
the
what-
genetics are super important, including, the genetics of planting and using those plants over and over and over without mixing the gene pool. So there's more to it.
There's a lot to it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, so that's a really great question, and next year, if we have anything to show, I'd love to talk about it.
You're talking mostly about perennials, right?
Yeah, oh, yeah. Uh-huh.
Perennial forbs and grasses and sedges, et cetera. State has large nurseries where they raise plants and they sell them to counties and to individuals and foresters, et cetera. A lot of that's in trees and shrubs. Do you know where their stock comes from, and are there any efforts on the state level to make sure that that is also done on regionally based and at some point, not too far, removed wild collecting?
That's a great question, and I can't answer it intelligently, but Ed Toth, he did a report for them about their Saratoga nursery to try to respond to Governor Hochul's demand for, I don't know, how many gazillion trees by 2040 or something. And he was like, there's no way, there's absolutely no way. So he tried to break it down and figure out that, and he understands where those trees are coming from, if it's seed, if it's cuttings, you know, that kind of thing, the genetics of that. So that's, if for some reason they're not releasing that report yet. So if I get any information, I will share it. Okay, that's a good
Okay,
question.
one quick Zoom question. Somebody said that they didn't see the form for signing up to be a scout on the Marsden site.
Okay, have them sign up for our newsletter and I'll get it out there.
Okay, how do they sign up for your
Just,
newsletter?
yeah, go to growingforscan.com
Okay.
and then it'll pop up. Or they can they scan this? They
Yeah.
can.
Yeah, yeah, so
Yeah, take a picture of this and it'll take you to the sign up.
Okay,
It should.
thank you.
You know, when you're like planting, do you always plant plugs or do you direct seed sometimes?
Don't direct seed unless it's a meadow, and I've done a lot of preparation. Because you can't outcompete what's there. There's thousands of seeds in every square inch of soil. And those seeds are, you know, they're just gonna come up. Something's gonna come up and outcompete. Unless the soil's been prepared. And there's several ways to do that. And I'm happy to talk to you about that. But just if you went to clear right now, you wouldn't be successful. So start them in plugs and get them in so you can watch them, so you know what they look like.
I bought some seed from Perennial Nursery in Minnesota. Should I not plant that?
It's up to you.
You know, I'm funny. I mean, I definitely am all about local ecotypes. That's what we do, right? Because we want to make sure we're feeding the wildlife that are here, right? But if you don't have anything else right now, you know, we buy our seed right now for meadows from Ernst because their local, their ecotype is PA, right? So it's closer. But if you look at the level 2 map, we've got kind of Minnesota northern region, right? So it's really hard to say. I mean, I would also, but something about buying seed people need to know is that, first of all, you put it down and you expect all those beautiful plants to come up, but most of them probably in that packet, if it's perennials, aren't gonna show their beautiful faces until next year because they have to go through the cold, wet winter, right? So you might see some, you know, annuals like black-eyed Susans or partridge pea, but you won't see the perennials, right? So depending on what's in the seed pack. So just be prepared for that.
Right.
In that vein, I have stuff that I bought from Prairie Moon 20 years ago and had to put out. At some point with adaptation, those are, you know, semi changed wilding.
Yeah, exactly. You know, it's interesting because I read this article about the cultivation stuff, right? I was so curious about how are they adapting to my watering them all the time, right? And apparently after a couple generations, they need to be watered. Right, so I'm like, oh boy, I'm not spoil these guys. Right? So adaptation does occur. I'm not a geneticist. I can't tell you. I can't answer that
You talked about how there's not any sort of like cohesive organization of all the disparate parts of this process. Is there anyone leading a charge to do that? And if not, who should be?
Well, Mars B, if they had gotten funding, would be leading that charge. I think if you're interested, they're the closest thing that I know. Is to get marsb.org. If you get on there, you can send them a message. They're very transparent about what they're doing. He's the most knowledgeable on supply chains that I've met so far. And that's what they want to do. They just don't.
And but then they're a government entity.
No.
Oh, they're not.
No, we're not. Did somebody else have a question back there? Saw somebody. Was it you? Did you have a question? No. Anybody else? Oh, yeah.
I just wondered, do you picture like painters selling these things? I mean, is that part of the supply chain? Get these natives into
Everywhere.
places where everyone.
Everywhere. So if you want to go on a Sunday morning and buy stuff for your walkway, you will be able to find, butterfly milkweed and nodding onion, short little things for your beautiful walkway, Yeah, I would. No, that would be awesome, but we need to have the supply. We just don't have it. I mean, and those kind of vendors, they need consistent supply. They need to know that's coming. They can't just like, oh yeah, hi, bring it in, whatever you got. It doesn't work that way. So. Yeah.
Are you familiar with Matt at Spring Farm? Spring Farm on one side of the road has an animal rescue, and on the other side of the road, they have property that Matt, and I think his name's Matt Perry, a naturalist, is dedicated to planting only local native plants there. And it is an absolutely fabulous place to visit, so if you ever get a chance.
I would love to. If you sign for our newsletter, maybe you could write down his name. Where is
And
it?
he does presentations as well, and takes beautiful photographs of plants and animals on that site.
Awesome. So where is it?
It's called Spring Farm. I can't remember if it's in Hamilton area,
Yeah.
but it's not too far away.
Gotcha.
Thank you.
Just write it down. That's really good. Anybody else? Don't forget to sign up. Oh, yeah.
So I'm kind of new to the native plant gardening, so I'm not very good at recognizing what is a native plant in the local area. But like I have some wild space, I guess, already in my backyard, but like I don't know what is invasive or native or that type of thing. So it's like, is there like a local guide with pictures of like what is what?
Picture
Does
this.
everyone else know this?
Picture this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the best apps out there is Picture This.
Picture this, okay.
What do you think about naturalists?
I just haven't figured out how to use it. I think it's great, but I just don't have time to figure it out. But I think that we should somehow build our local knowledge about what's here using an app like that.
But there's also SCK, which is part of our natural.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Yeah, it's
I think we need training in this. I need training. I have to learn. what our app
I
is.
just had a webinar.
You did?
Yeah, I did. I think
Yeah. Thank you.
I've just learned so many apps between accounting and marketing. Anyway.
And you referred to people signing up to this, do you have a sign up sheet for your
Yes,
newsletter?
yeah, right over here.
Oh, okay, make sure if you've signed up, we also, for HGCMI, have a sign up. So make sure if you want to sign up for her, make sure that's what you signed up for.
Sign up for both of them.
Yeah.
The QR code works right now.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
QR code. Yeah.
It takes you to the dose saloon farm.
Yeah.
But that seems close enough.
Yeah,
So you're talking very much about trying to collect seeds that are regional and specific to different ecologies, different
habitats.
habitats. And yet, obviously, there's a lot in the news. We know that climate change is real and that probably the temperature changes, the humidity changes, the moisture, all this stuff is going to happen faster than most plants, certainly trees. tend to move or adapt. So should there be, do you think, built into seed collections also moving things or? I mean, you're already taking Ernst seed, which is Pennsylvania, and using it here. Maybe that's a good thing.
Maybe,
Yeah,
yeah, I thought about it, that's what I think, But-
Or should there just be studies to find out what the viability is and how far north things
right?
travel?
I mean, there are studies out there, but nothing's conclusive, nobody, and this region will be more buffered because of the Great Lakes too, so. We may have more time.
Given the wildfire situation up north, I mean, I think
know.
we should be trying to extend bigger regions, but
Yeah,
just to give the plant, I mean, not wasting a ton of our seed, but if you're going from plugs, trying to edge stuff north now is probably harder than. Like, I did my master's degree in ecology 30 years ago, and we said that this was gonna be a problem, and still don't do anything about it, so. You know, except now push, and I love that Rachel May pushed through the bills that she did.
she's great, she is great, so, yeah, we need to get this next one through. The pollinator promotion, because that would be for New York State, that would be amazing. If all the state lands had pollinators, I mean, that would be just fantastic. I mean, I really applaud New York, nobody else, no other states are quite like this. Honestly, the Maryland one, I've lived in Maryland part-time, and the Maryland bill is, they set up a native plant program within their extension service. But they have no mandates like this. It's just like, okay, we're gonna get native plant information out there. That's great. But they need, it has to be about building the supply chain. It has to be about supply and demand. You've gotta focus on this. That's my opinion. Yeah.
So looking at the geese nurse seed supplies, and they will often say where the ecotype is, and they will mention places in New York. So they get it
They
all
do.
over, and it makes me wonder how they manage their seed production.
I know, I need to go there and see,
Yeah,
but you could do the cultivation kind of thing. If you had a transplanter that you just put the plugs in like that you do in big ag, right? You just drop the plugs in, it would be really fast, but I didn't have the money to buy a transplanter, right? So this just seems like a solution that works for growers like me, right? Yeah.
I just wanted to comment really good about, or the comment about climate change and leaving maybe the range of natives. And actually I work at ESF, and we had somebody come talk last week during Earth Week, from the American Resiliency group. It's really just one lady, and she's in Iowa, so it's americanresiliency.org. And she was talking a lot about that with the climate change, the changing temperature, but also talking about natives and considering thinking more about our food supply. And she brought up that point of perhaps things further south can grow and survive here. But also that this region is a great place to be in the changing climate. And so I just wanted to comment on that.
And rainfall patterns, it's gonna
Right.
become huge. I mean, temperature is huge, but solar and rainfall are such a really depending on, so with the jet stream instability that we've been experiencing, it's.
Yeah.
I'm also curious about the NRCS, USDA. I see that people, like, especially down south, I've noticed on like social media, they're getting equip money to do native plantings and restoration. And other local farmers that just happen to hear, like, they're trying to restore old pastures and things like that, and so they sounds like they're thinking about native plants. I'm wondering if you've talked to anybody from USDA about activity in the New York area or this region.
I haven't, I've talked to people in Maryland about it. It's, very much looking at ag land, right, and trying to get natives on there for pollination, but also I mean, they've got some great seed cleaning facilities that they use for ag. And there's no reason why those seed cleaning facilities could not also be used for native plants.
Yeah, I mean, if demand is growing
Yeah,
rapidly.
yeah, yeah. It just depends on whether or not the seniors in the institution agree, right? So it has to be some kind of political support for it. Because there is one down by Elmira, I think, it's not Elmira, I can't remember the name of the town. But it would be a perfect one for all of us. Right? Because that takes a lot of time. Seed cleaning. Yeah,
For the Seed Scout volunteering, I'm assuming you're talking about public lands? That,
not necessarily.
okay.
No, I give the seed collectors, you know, when I'm out on private land, I ask the landowner if I see populations, I tell them everybody has to get permission, right? And there's protocols for that, so, but John would be able to tell you all about that.
If you're crazy enough to volunteer to do plugs, this would be the newsletter to sign up for.
Yeah, that would be me, yeah. Oh, please, I'm crazy. We're all crazy.
I am.
Good. Yeah,
How do you clean the seed? I'm just curious.
it depends on the seed. Some of them you just put it in a bag and you shake and they come pretty clean. And some of them there's different size screens, different, weaves, and you rub them and then the shape falls through or the seeds fall through, depending on what the seed is. Yeah, some of them have to be scarified, which means you scrape a little bit, like if it were going through a bird's intestine or something and it got all, the outside was scraped enough so that it can, when you put it into the soil, it can germinate.
Do you do that scraping just before you plant it, or do you store it that way?
Yeah, we store it that way. So what we do now is we've got an old motorcycle trailer that gets cold in the winter, right? Because it's sitting outside. And we fill our trays and put the seeds in the fall and get them in there so they can stay below 55 for a long time. And the majority of our seeds need 30 or 60 days, but give them 90 or give them as much as we
So they're
can.
above ground?
Oh, yeah, they're just sitting in plastic, so they stay moist, right? In plastic bags that we reuse every year. And then we stack them in there, and then April 1st, we take them out and put them in a plastic covered hoop houses. Get lots of germination. God, so many seeds. Yeah.
I was gonna say, I'm interested about like the grant program and based on your experience as someone trying to do this as a business to generate enough profit to support yourself. What would be like this ideal grant program? Like what would be some of the expenses that growers could use the grants for? Like, what are some of the biggest roadblocks to getting a business of your type set up?
Labor for planting. Let me think about this for a minute. I mean, labor for anything related to the seed production. So collection, cleaning, storing, planting. Anything having to do with seed production, plug production, and getting them out to the wild. So all that is labor. There's materials, there's trays. That's it, I think. We need to build another storage container so it's rodent protected for more trays. Yeah.
How much do you see deer browse damaging your new plants being an issue when you're working at large scale?
Depends on the place. We put cages around, like I'm just about to put in some shrubs and a bunch of other. The herbaceous stuff, they don't go such, or the grass. Just the shrubs, they will, yes.
I don't.
Just gonna put a big thing around it for a couple of years and then.
Okay.
Anybody else? It's been a real pleasure. Thank you very much.